first sign on, you'll see the tool view. Click on the Connections tab. Any connections that have previously been added will display on this grid. Now let's click on the Add Connection button. There are three types of roles in ShareMyToolbox: employees, administrators, and virtual. You'll need to put a lot of thought into how you'll be using the system before setting up these roles. Feel free to call support if needed. The first role we'll discuss is employee, which will be the most common type. We call it employee, but it doesn't have to be. It can really be any individual you wish to connect with to borrow, loan, or share tools. It could be a subcontractor, for example. The general rules for employee roles are they're required to download the app. They can borrow tools from the company or transfer tools with other employees. If tools are transferred or borrowed, they'll receive a notification to accept with certain conditions. They cannot add, edit, or delete company tools, but they can create personal tools and make their own connections, such as friends, family, and co-workers. If an employee is terminated, subject to all the company tools being checked back in, you can sever the connection and they can still use ShareMyToolbox for personal items. They will retain all their personal connections as well. Let's take a look at this role on the mobile device. This is the example of a company user, and this is the example of an employee type role. You notice that from the employee perspective, under his connections, there are 165 tools available. Since he's only connected to the company has 165 tools available, which matches what the employee sees as a connection. Now the employee actually has 2 personal tools. Now most employees, if they don't set up anything, they're going to see zeros down at the bottom. So this sort of illustrates the difference from what the company sees versus what the employee sees. When you set up an employee connection, the required fields are first name, last name, email address, and a password. Let's expand the box a little bit so we can see more of this. Both auto-accept tool assignments and allow tool transfer to virtual connections default to off, but can be enabled. If auto-accept tool assignments is enabled, then when a tool is loaned or transferred, the employee will not be required to acknowledge the transaction. So think about that a little bit. You should be careful using this option since it reduces employee accountability. If they don't have to accept the transaction, then they don't necessarily know that they have that tool. They're not acknowledging it. If allow transfer to virtual connections is enabled, virtual connections will display on the connection list when transferring tools. We'll talk about this a little more later. But this should also be used with caution. Only responsible employees or administrators should have this ability. So let's add an employee. If an employee's email does not exist in our ShareMyToolbox database, when we click Submit, then you'll be setting up this employee in addition to establishing a connection. They'll receive an automated email from us with instructions to download the app from the App Store or Google Play and then log on with the credentials we just supplied, john@hotmail.com, and whatever password we gave it. The status on the connection grid when we hit accept will then show accepted. If the employee's email already exists in our database, they'll receive an automated email that the company wishes to connect to them, similar to what you would get on Facebook or LinkedIn. Then they'll have to log on to their mobile app, and there will be a notification to accept or deny the request. Until they accept the invitation, the status on the grid over here will be pending. The next role is administrator. The general rules for the admin are they can add, edit, or delete company tools. They can access the web interface and perform all the functions of the tool owner except accessing the billing tab that you see in the background. They cannot create personal tools. Again, any tools that they add will be company tools. The admin role defaults to allow tool transfer to virtual connections, but either option can be changed. If an individual in your organization is assigned tools and needs to be an administrator, use separate sign-on emails. Now let's take a look at the mobile devices to see how an admin looks compared to the primary company administrator. So again, we have the company login, then we have admin Andy that you can see in the background. We've given Andy that role. So the two dashboards look identical. Andy adds a tool. It's going to click off down here, and it's going to go up to 165. It will not show as a personal tool for Andy. The last role is a virtual connection. And this one gives you tremendous flexibility in ShareMyToolbox. Only first and last name are required to set up a virtual connection. Auto accept is enabled by default and cannot be changed since the connection does not really exist. There's no one there to accept. Virtual connection can be used in a lot of different scenarios, such as an employee that needs to be assigned tools but doesn't have a smartphone, a tool trailer that cannot be assigned to one responsible party. Perhaps there's 3 or 4 foremen that draw tools out of a tool trailer on a large job site. A repair bin that broken tools can be transferred to. A truck that has permanent tools assigned. Or even you might want to create a virtual connection for a pending tool loan status. If somebody wants to request a tool and you need to hold it for a number of days and sort of mark it as being in use, then a virtual connection is good for that. We're not scheduling that tool, but you can actually hold it that way and mark it so it doesn't show up as available. Just use your imagination on how you might want to use this. Regarding the naming conventions for virtual connections, I would continue to use first and last name for employees, sort of like we've done John Doe here. For trailers, trucks, etc., I'd probably use virtual for the first name and description for the last. This keeps most virtual connections together rather than scattered among employee connections. We've also have a unique icon, the V, to designate a virtual connection at a glance. If you're setting up employees, you cannot add a picture, but make sure that your employees do go back and add a photograph to their profile on the mobile device so that you can see who it is. Another useful tip for virtual connections is using them for employees in a phased implementation. Let's say you've had 30 employees that will be using ShareMyToolbox, but you wish to deploy 10 per month over the next 3 months. So in month 1, you could set up 10 employee connections and 20 virtual. This way you can assign tools to everyone, including the virtual connections, without having to train everybody. In month 2, add 10 more employee connections and then do a mass transfer of their tools over to the corresponding virtual. Note that virtual connections do not count against the paid total. So if you purchase 10 connections in total, that's comprised of admins and employees, and you could have unlimited virtual connections that do not count against the paid total. Note that there are only a few fields that can be edited on the connection grid. Roles can be edited for employees and admins, but not virtual. An employee can be set up initially as an admin to facilitate entry of company tools. So you can set up all your employees as admins, let them add tools that will count as company tools, and then when they're done, you can switch them back to an employee. Do not change an employee role to admin if the employee has already created personal tools. Otherwise, the personal tools will not be accessible. The first and last name can be changed for virtual roles, but you cannot do that on admin or employee roles. Employees and admins need to sign into their mobile device and edit their profiles in order to change their names and upload their photograph. Auto accept tool assignment can be changed for employees and admins. So if we have a false there, we can change it to true for employee Hillary. Primary user can also be changed via the My Profile tab at the top. Allow transfer to virtual connections can be changed for employees and admins. The primary company user cannot be changed and will always default to true. I hope you found this video helpful on adding connections. This concludes this tutorial. Thank you.